All right, welcome back to the Press Box Podcast. Today we're bringing you episode number 120 of the podcast, and we're going to talk NFL today. Week 2 is concluding tonight. Monday Night Football, as we're recording this, we're going to talk about the first 2 weeks, specifically dig into some of the games that happened yesterday in week 2, break those down, and then talk a little bit about the big picture here after the first 2 weeks of the season. Before we get into that, as always, follow us on Twitter at PressBoxPod. We'll put up a poll question this week. Not sure what it'll be yet, but look for that. And rate and subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. That's also important. We love hearing from everybody. So just keep following us and listening to the podcast. Without further ado, episode number 120 starts now.
Okay, welcome back to the Press Box Podcast. I'm your co-host, Ralph Miranda. I'll be joined by my other co-host, Joseph Miranda, and our producer, Nathan Miranda, shortly. This is episode number 120 of the Press Box Podcast. And today, we've got 2 weeks under our belt in the NFL season. There's been lots of surprises, both positive and negative surprises. And we're going to break some of that down for you today. I think the last time we were with you, we talked a little bit about fantasy football, our fantasy preview. And of course, as it is most seasons, guys that we draft don't seem to pan out, and other guys that we passed up on seem to pan out. So at least that's been my experience. But anyway, we'll get into the first 2 weeks of the season, and I want to start with throwing out to you guys a little bit about what are some of your top surprises for this particular week. I mean, I know the first week we really don't know a whole lot about teams until they play a game, but there were some exciting games this week. And Joseph, I guess I'll start with you. What were some of the things that you thought were pretty outstanding this week in the NFL?
So as far as just pure surprise, I think the Jaguars shutting out the Colts 24-0. Mm-hmm. I know that they threw out some stats yesterday that matchup historically in Jacksonville for the past 7 or 8 years the Jaguars have won, but
right.
Just the 24-0, right? So they shut them out. And then, coming into the season, the Colts were kind of a trendy pick to win the division. They got Matt Ryan, Jonathan Taylor's arguably the top back last year. And they haven't looked great so far this season. They tied week 1.
Right.
And didn't show up at all against Jacksonville yesterday. So that was probably the biggest surprise when you look at all the games. But you're right. A lot of great games yesterday. The Jets-Browns I haven't seen anything like that really. Getting an onside kick when now the league's basically designed it where you're not supposed to get an onside kick and they make it really hard.
Right.
So that was surprising. And then ending to the Cardinals and Raiders game was excellent too, overtime with the scoop and score fumble.
Right. Nathan, what were your takeaways from the week?
I agree with the Jaguars. I think that was one of the biggest surprises to probably everybody who watches the NFL. Not just that they won, but not just that they won big, but they shut out Indianapolis too.
Right.
I think no offense to Jaguars fans, but I don't think that's like a sign that the Jaguars are going to win the division or anything. That's just no. Whatever. But I was also surprised. Go ahead.
So let's see how the Titans look tonight.
Yeah.
Well, that's true because they did lose to the Giants. Giants 2-0 though.
This is true.
But that's not a bad point, Joseph. But I even think that I would bet on the Colts winning the division before the Jaguars. I know they just got killed by the Jaguars, but I can see the Colts winning more games this year than the Jaguars.
I would agree. I would agree.
But so outside of that though, I was surprised. My second biggest surprise was the Ravens blowing the lead they had against the Dolphins. I didn't necessarily think the Ravens were going to blow them out going into that game. Then once they did, I certainly didn't think they were going to let the Dolphins come all the way back like that. The Ravens were up, let's see here, 28-7 at halftime, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was, 35-14 going into the fourth quarter. and then the Dolphins scored 28 points in the fourth. The Ravens scored 3. The Ravens lose 42-38. And then some of those. Well, I don't. We can break. I don't know if you want to break down games later. I'll just touch on them for now. But and then the Browns Jets. The way it ended was surprising. And I'm kind of a little surprised the Jets even won the period, but the way it ended specifically. And then the Rams blew another fairly big lead to the Falcons, which was strange.
They didn't.
They won, but it was closer than it should have been, I think. But yeah.
Well, I think what you're seeing. I mean, we've talked about this before. I mean, let's face it. There's parity in the NFL. Okay. I mean, it's not like baseball where you have big market teams and small market teams. There's parity, and the famous movie that we all love, Any Given Sunday, is a famous saying in football, right? I mean, right now on any given Sunday, any team can really beat any other team if things fall the right way. So I think you have to play a full 60 minutes, and sometimes even doing that doesn't help you because the other teams have talent too. I mean, you look at the Dolphins. I mean, they got Tyreek Hill, they got Jalen Waddle, right? I mean, Tua, doubting Tua, as we heard one of their famous fans talk about in the Miami Stadium last year. But the guy had a phenomenal day yesterday. I mean, for all his faults, he threw for 6 touchdown passes. So, I think there's parity. I guess for me, and I'll throw this question out to you guys here in a second, but really a couple things kind of stood out to me yesterday. I guess was the first one was obviously the 3 comeback wins by the Cardinals, the Jets, and the Dolphins. But I'm also really surprised at the Giants. I mean, obviously, I don't think the Giants are yet ready for prime time. I don't think they're going to go 11-5 or 11-6 or 12-5. I think the Giants will probably be a 500 team. But I think to me, the most impressive thing about the Giants is that this staff and general managership has turned this team around to the point where, hey, they don't have all the pieces in place, but they're playing hard. They don't give up. They're competitive. And I think as a fan, at least for a fan of a team that hasn't played well for the last 5 or 6 years, that's what you want. So let me throw this out to you guys. You guys all touched on the 3 games, right? The Raiders losing a big lead to the Cardinals, and that was really an interesting way that the game ended. The Browns and the Jets and the Ravens and the Dolphins. Which one? I'll start with you, Nathan. Which one was the most surprising to you of the lost leads lost?
Of the leads that were lost.
Yeah, of those 3 teams, the Raiders, Browns, and the Raiders. Which game was the most surprising to you as the way it turned out?
The Ravens game. I guess we can go ahead and just talk about that game right now, since that's my answer. I mean, I guess you could say the Dolphins have a high-powered offense now. I don't know, but it's still surprising to me because the Ravens are not just I don't think they're not just like an average team that happened to be up by a lot against the Dolphins. Right. The Ravens are a very good team, at least in the regular season. Right. They're one of the better teams in the league, I think, in the last couple of years in the regular season. So it's one of the better teams in the league had that kind of lead, and they blew it. And I mean, and it's not like they in the way it happened. Like at the end of the game, Tyreek Hill had 2 pretty long touchdown passes where he just got behind everybody. And I'm just thinking, how does that happen? I really don't understand how that happens. I mean, for one, you can't let anybody get that wide open on you deep when in that situation to begin with. But then 2, I mean, to have it be Tyreek Hill, he should be. I mean, that should be your first, second, and third concern in those situations. Tyreek Hill. You should put so much attention on him that maybe you slip up and have somebody else gets behind you that you forget about, and maybe you would like him to execute where that doesn't happen, at all. But if it's going to happen, let it be some other guy. Don't let it be Tyreek Hill. I mean, that's what the Dolphins want. It's feeding into his ego too, which I don't like. And it's just that.
So I've said this before, I think.
Yeah, you're right.
Not in the podcast. I'll say it now. Ravens are classic front runners. Okay, when things are going well for them and they're gashing teams on the ground, Lamar Jackson's running, he's throwing. and everything's fine. And that's how the game started, right? And you mentioned letting Tyreek Hill get open. I think on that first touchdown, all it takes is one mistake by a DB, right? He thought he had help or something, and he scores. Okay, well then they need to get the ball back, and they need to just regroup and keep taking care of business. Well, then they start to build a little pressure. Miami gets a stop before you know it spirals out of control, right? They're front runners, like I said. Now, on the other side, right, you talked about the big day that Tua had. Well, I mean, he was just hitting wide open receivers that were just flying downfield uncovered. It was not like he was like making great throws or like that touchdown pass Brady had yesterday in the back of the end zone. It was a great throw when they needed a touchdown. He's not doing that. He's just hitting wide open receivers. So I am going to keep doubting Tua, okay? Because, yeah, well, like I said, he wasn't like, I don't know. He wasn't like just throwing the ball all over the field and making great passes. That's all I'm going to say. So,
right. So I don't disagree with that.
I still thought the Ravens were going to win, like you said. So it's surprising in that matter, but it's also not surprising because the Ravens are front runners.
Well, and there might have been I can't remember if Tyreek Hill had two long touchdown passes or if one.
He had two. Yeah, he had two.
He had two long ones, right?
Yeah.
But then didn't he catch another one that was shorter, but he was just like he was open or no? I don't know.
I think I don't know.
Anyways, I know I agree with you, Joseph, and I agree with you completely. The Ravens were front runners. I kind of knew that, I guess. I remember you said that once before, and I agreed with you at that time, I think. So I should have been surprised, I guess, because if I thought they were front runners, but it still was just surprising because it was the Dolphins too. If they had that kind of lead against the Buccaneers and Brady and the Bucs came back, I wouldn't have been as surprised, obviously.
Well, let me throw this out real quick, and you can continue your point, Nathan. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle both had 11 catches yesterday. Both had 2 touchdowns. Hill had 190 yards receiving, Waddle 171. Hill's longest was a 60-yarder, and Waddle's was a 59-yarder. So you had 2 gigantic catches by those guys.
And look, I've never played cornerback, so I can't speak to this. But if you're unsure on a coverage, if you have help over top or something, maybe just err on the side of that you don't have help over top and let the guy catch it underneath and come up and tackle. Maybe that. Right. Instead of just thinking, if you're unsure, especially when you're up by that much. I mean, unless maybe he wasn't unsure. Maybe he just thought for sure that he had help over top. I don't know. It's just that can't happen, first of all. And the Ravens are just the classic example. They're going to dominate this season, the Ravens. They're going to win the division. They're going to make the playoffs. But teams like that, teams that do what we saw Sunday, don't win Super Bowls. They don't win AFC championships.
Right.
I don't think.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree. I don't disagree with that at all. I think the Ravens, and really let's we've had our share of talking about Lamar Jackson, but Lamar Jackson wasn't the reason they lost that game. I mean, he had a fun game, played very well, but like you said, I mean, when you're up 35-14, I think your defense has to put the clamps down on the team and force them to go and make long drives to score rather than too long.
I'm not blaming Lamar Jackson for blowing.
No, I know you're not. I just wanted to.
No, you're right, and that's always been the thing too. When the Ravens have been the best Ravens teams in the past, have had great defenses, and they need to get back to that type of football. I don't think they've ever really had like a horrible defense recently to speak of, but they need to get back to having those, just really stout defenses that. Well, again, I guess also who can you? I mean, I don't follow them like that closely to know their depth chart, but who can you really name that are some big players on the defense? I don't know. I mean, historically, you can name Ed Reed, Ray Lewis, Bart Scott, all these guys. It's like I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying they need to get back to having a great defense.
Joseph, how about you? What was your most surprising, either loss of a lead or comeback from yesterday?
I'll say the Jets just because, well, it's not surprising in the fact that the Browns blew the lead because they're the Browns, but with the time, the amount of time it took to happen, like it was under 2 minutes and the Jets were down by 2 touchdowns. So, that's a scenario where, and it's the Jets. So you're like, and I touched on this briefly in the open. The NFL, they've changed the rules in the onside kick now, where you can't stack the line, shift, to one side, and you can't start running the ball's kicked and all that. So it's almost impossible to get an onside kick
Right.
And if the Jets somehow do it, and then score a few seconds left and win the game, and Joe Flacco ends up. I think he had 4 touchdown passes.
I think so. Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah.
So another classic example of a QB that was probably on your fantasy waiver wire that you could have just picked up and put in there and get a 4 touchdown game out of. But anyway, and I'm not sure he shouldn't keep the job when Zach Wilson gets healthy, but that's a different story.
I would say this: if the Jets happen to win next week against the Bengals, I would say probably will keep the job.
Hey, no interceptions too, though. No interceptions.
Yeah, he's a Super Bowl winning quarterback. Anyway. But yeah, you just don't see that type of comeback in that short amount of time from under 2 minutes. So that's why I'll go with that being surprising.
Yeah. What do you think about? I know the lot's been made about the coach that said I forget, but people were saying making fun of the Jets a lot. He was saying he's going to keep receipts or something like that, right? Like if people they're going to have to eat their words or something. Or did you hear about that?
Yeah,
they're going to turn things around. I don't think this is any type of sign that they're turning things around. They beat the Browns.
Right now, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So we're on the same page with that. You don't think hey, the Jets could do something this year? No. Okay.
Well, I think
they have to. When they beat the Bills, then we'll start talking.
Yeah. Right. Well, let me. And again, I know that what I'm about to say is going to be pretty well shadowed by the fact that I'm a Giants fan. But let's look at it kind of logically and qualitatively or quantitatively, but that's why it's so important to find a good head coach and a good general manager, because you look at the Jets, they've been drafting at the top of the draft now for many years, and they just can't seem to turn around, whether it's through draft choices or free agent. But then you look at the Giants have been pitiful, with the exception of 2016. They've been pitiful for the last 10 years, but now they get a new general manager, a new coach. And we don't see behind the scenes, the coaches they hire, the staff they hire, what they're doing day to day. But obviously, the Giants may go 8-9, but obviously they've had some tremendous impact on this organization to start putting them towards, or at least on the path to success. And that's why some of these teams can't do it, because they either make the wrong hires, which the Giants did for 3 or 4 years. It's important. I mean, I think you got to have the right structure in place and get the right players through free agency and the draft. And the Jets obviously have not been able to do that.
Well, let me ask you this, though. I'm not trying to throw cold water on – well, I'm not saying the Giants are not as good as 2-0 or anything. They're 2-0. I'm just saying, do you think it's really an issue? Are you really convinced after these 2 games that they've got the right structure now all of a sudden? Because they played – correct me if I'm wrong – they played in a lot of close games last season. They just went the other way late in the game for them, right? And these first 2 games were close games that happened to go in their favor. So my point is, I feel like these first 2 games are very similar to a lot of the games they played in last year. It's just that these first 2 games have gone their way to end with, whereas last year it's not going their way.
I think, and I'm very unbiased on the Giants. Okay,
I know.
I know. So, but I do think that there's just a little something different about this year's team, where that last year's team would not be 2-0 in these same situations. I feel like.
No, they wouldn't be.
But
okay.
I think that I think Daniel Jones is still not very good, and I think Barkley's like an average to above average running back, but he's not the second overall pick. But the coach making the decision to go for 2 in game 1, that was a big call, right? He could have just kicked the extra point. Who knows what happens in overtime? That shows a little chutzpah or whatever. And then like this week, I said this on our text thread that Baker Mayfield's terrible, right? But still, like Nathan said, they did play in a lot of close games last year, but there's something to be said for winning close games, right? Yeah. So this year's team is, I think, like you said, I agree with you. Like, not going to go 14-3 or anything, but they're good. I definitely think they're better, and I think that they're taking the right. I think they're taking the right direction as far as like the coach and front office. I still think they need to get a real quarterback, but they're headed in the right direction. I'll say that.
Well, I agree with that, and I also value your point, Nathan. I mean, I think the difference is, let's face it, most NFL games, and you guys can disagree with me if you want, but most NFL games are going to be close games. Okay, I mean, they're going to be games that you have to win in the fourth quarter, and the Giants have not been able to do that, either through mistakes or either through bad play calling or whatever. But now, whether they go 8-9 or even 6-11, they seem to have gotten over the hump where they're learning how to win. In other words, when they're faced with situations where they're behind, they don't give up. They don't make a lot of mistakes. They still make a few, but they're able to clamp down and do what it takes. And I think to be a successful team, especially a team that has been poor for a long time, I think two things. You have to, one, learn how to win. And then when you learn how to win, you have to learn how to handle winning. In other words, you can't take each win so much that the next week you come out and you lay an egg. So I think the Giants are starting to get to that point. And I think that's the difference right now at this point between the Giants, say, and the Jets and whatever other teams you want to throw in there that have been bad for the last 6, 7, 8 years.
Those are excellent points. I do agree that the Giants of last season would not be 2-0. And you make a good point. I mean, I don't think – I was positing something that is – I don't think I agree. You probably can't – you can't chalk up to, just it happened to bounce their way now and it wasn't bouncing their way last season. Well, it's on – they have to learn how to win close games, like you said. So it's not like it just happenstance is going their way this year. It's something about them. They're playing differently where they're able to pull them out. So good on them. I agree with you. And I do think also it was a good sign to after beating Tennessee week 1, which was a shocker kind of, I think, for a lot of people. Right. That they could very easily let their guard down and come out and lay an egg against Carolina, but they won again. So that was an impressive win too. It's not like they I think that's more impressive than beating Carolina week 1 than Tennessee week 2. No.
I agree. All right, let me throw something else out to you guys. We talked a little bit about this yesterday on our text chat line, but let's look at the San Francisco 49ers for a minute. They got beat by the Bears in week 1. Obviously sloppy field, whatever you want to call it. They were able to come out yesterday and get a big win over Seattle, but they did lose their supposed franchise quarterback, Trey Lance, to a season-ending injury, which he apparently had surgery on today. So we all saw Jimmy Garoppolo come off the bench and actually play pretty well. Where does that put the 49ers? I mean, let's say, obviously Garoppolo is going to play the rest of the year. Let's say they make the playoffs and go deep in the playoffs. I mean, next year rolls around, what do you do? I think, Joseph, you could probably correct me because you're our resident contract guy. You seem to look it up and know a lot about it. But I think he signed a 1-year deal, if I'm not mistaken. So what do you do? What do you do when the season ends?
Okay, so you never want to see anybody get hurt, obviously. But
no, obviously, right.
This is the best thing that could happen to the 49ers, okay? Because it takes the pressure off them now. They can play Garoppolo, right? They'll never admit this, but a little bit of the issue was they traded up to get Lance to figure we better play this guy. Like, we have all this invested in him, whether they're feeling pressure from the owner or whatever. So I think they forced him out there a little bit before he was ready. So now you have Garoppolo. He's taking him to the Super Bowl. He's taken him to another NFC Championship game. Okay, I think this puts them in a great spot. The Rams haven't looked all that impressive these first 2 weeks. Okay, we know the Cardinals are kind of. I mean, they should have lost that. Yeah, they should have lost that game yesterday. They're another team that are front runners, by the way, just like the Ravens. But and the Seahawks, Geno Smith's the quarterback. That's all I need to say there. So, I think this puts them in a great spot to win the division, or at least compete with the Rams. When they play each other, that'll be a good game. But and if things take shape like you said, I think you just have to admit when you're wrong and stay with Garoppolo, right? I mean,
but are they going to do that? In other words, I mean, think. First of all, if Garoppolo was a guy that hadn't started before, say, and he got beat out in camp by Lance, and then he comes on and has a great year, I think you can make that decision with no problem. But here's a guy that took you to a Super Bowl, took you to an NFC Championship game, and you decide to shed him for a rookie draft. Now, I don't think you can make that decision very easily because you still got this elephant sitting there that you traded up to get with the second or third pick that obviously has not, in the times that he's played, has not shown much. If you go with Garoppolo, you're basically saying, hey, we made a mistake. And now you've got to get rid of him. You've got to trade him or find someone.
Okay.
Garoppolo is not 25 years old either. So
I know. Well, look, I mean, look what the Cardinals did a few years ago, right? I still, as constructed, they're not a Super Bowl winning team, but they drafted Josh Rosen with their first pick. I don't remember if they traded up to get him. After 1 year, they were done with him, and they drafted Kyler Murray. Of course, they had the number 1 pick the next year, but they basically said, hey, we've made a mistake. We're going with Kyler Murray. You're out. And it benefited them. They're better than they were. So
Yeah, but Rosen didn't take him to a Super Bowl and an NFC Championship game before that, though. Right?
No, I'm saying in that scenario, Rosen is Trey Lance. You just get rid of him and say, we made a mistake.
Okay. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's like you said, season has to take its course. If they end up, 8-9 or 9-8, and Garoppolo is like so, then yeah, fine. Bring Lance back, let him go. But if Garoppolo takes him deep into the playoffs, then you got to stick with him.
What do you think, Nathan?
I agree with what they should do, is what Joseph just said. If Garoppolo gets into the playoffs this year, and regardless of what they do in the playoffs, then you have to stick with them. But I just don't think the 49ers are going to do that. Even if he doesn't get into the playoffs, if they play well with Garoppolo again this year, because like you said, he's taken to the Super Bowl, he's taken to the NFC Championship game. I've never seen a quarterback do so much for a team just be done with them so quickly. I don't know. But I don't think the 49ers are going to do any of that, because I don't think they are willing to admit they made a mistake with Lance, because they're in too deep with him.
Right. I agree.
They're not going to do that. They're not going to admit it. It's a pride thing. I think they'd rather get to the NFC Championship game again this year and lose, and get rid of Garoppolo and go back to Lance, just because they have to save face with people,
Right.
Which is a shame. And I'm not even saying that Lance won't be a good quarterback for somebody. I just think he wasn't the right choice for the 49ers. They made a mistake when they had a Super Bowl quarterback already. Why would you do this? Maybe he'll go somewhere else and catch on. I don't know, but I don't think the 49ers made the right decision in that.
Well, and look, in all fairness to Trey Lance, he went to, was it Liberty? Am I mistaken?
North Dakota State, I think.
North Dakota State. What? I'm thinking of a different guy. Okay.
Carson Wentz was North Dakota State. No, he went to South Dakota State.
Yeah, but so did Lance.
Nathan, look this up. Where did Lance go?
Trey Lance went to North Dakota State.
Okay, all right. So, I don't know how many games he started there, but it's not, he wasn't playing Ohio State and Texas and Alabama. So he may have the talent that the 49ers saw. But he's a guy I think you draft and you let him sit for a couple of years, okay, and develop and all that. And he very well could be a good quarterback. We don't know. I'm just saying you don't just draft him, trade up, draft him, and throw him in there and say he's our guy and just keep Garoppolo to the side. I think they did it wrong. Right. Like I said, now the pressure's off for this season, right? Because they can't play him now. He's hurt. Let Garoppolo play and then see how it plays out.
And I completely agree with you. Look, I've been on Garoppolo's side. I know you all say, and I guess it's objectively true that one pass the Super Bowl kind of cost them the Super Bowl, all right, whatever. But he took them to the Super Bowl. Is my point. I know. Took him to the NFC Championship game, and they just discard him like he's nothing. And then going back to Trey Lance, I have his college stats from it. Just he played 3 years, 18, 19, 20, right? Let's see here. He just played 2 games in 18. He was a freshman. He did, 19 was his big year. He played 16 games, right? Completion percentage of 66.9, 2,786 yards passing, 28 touchdowns. No interception.
I don't think North Dakota State played in 20 because that was a pandemic year.
28 touched 16 games.
They played 6 games in 2020?
2019.
How about 2020? I don't think
he only played in 1 game. That's where I was getting to.
Right.
He played in 1 game, threw 149 yards, 2 touchdowns and interception. Then that's it for him.
That's it.
He had 1 year in 2019.
Right. Exactly. That's it. So you basically traded up a lot of draft capital to take a guy with the 2nd or 3rd pick who you really don't know what you got. I mean, the guy played 1 year of college football.
I know.
And 28 touchdowns and no picks. He wasn't exactly playing against NFL talent. I mean, there may be a handful of guys out of those teams that made it to the NFL, but it's not, so like I said, it's more of a project where you let him sit for a couple of years.
Yeah. All of this adds up to not to just don't draft him, but maybe draft him, let him learn under Garoppolo, not all this stuff. I don't think we're saying you don't draft a guy, but to draft him and just act like he's Peyton Manning, Heisman Trophy winner. I know he didn't win it, but somebody like that, it's ridiculous. I don't know what they were thinking.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think they made a classic mistake, and now they're they're suffering. I mean, Joseph's right. Joseph's hit it on the head. I mean, we don't really want to see a guy ever injured, but this is the best thing that happened to them, because had he continued playing and played poorly, they would have had to bench him, and that would have caused a big uproar too. Right. But now they can go ahead and play Garoppolo without worrying about anything. But they're going to have to pay the piper come the offseason if Garoppolo has a really good year, and we'll see.
I just even if Garoppolo has a great year and they get to the playoffs, I don't see them going.
I don't need.
They've gone too far the other way.
I agree. No, I agree.
One of you had a funny comment. You said that after he went down, Garoppolo should have refused to go in the game.
I don't think I said that. Yeah.
Yeah, that was good.
You should pull the longest yard. It's my knee. It looks fine to me. Well, it ain't.
Yeah, well, it ain't. All right, let me throw out another topic to you guys. Last Thursday night, which seems like an eternity ago, we had the Chiefs and the Chargers play. The Chargers had the lead late in that game, and then the Chiefs made a comeback and won the game. But it obviously looks like that division is going to be a two-team race. I don't see the Raiders winning the division. I certainly don't see the Broncos winning the division. They not only did they lose their first game to the Seahawks, they struggled mightily with the Texans yesterday, which may be a better team since they tied the Colts. But then again, the Colts may not be very good. But so it's going to be the Chiefs and the Chargers. Based on what you guys have seen, what do you think? I mean, the Chiefs look like they really haven't missed a beat. Even though they lost Tyreek Hill, they seem to be playing better, and their defense, to me, looks better than it did the last few years. But then again, the Chargers look awfully strong, and I think Herbert is the real deal. So, Joseph, I'll start with you on this one. What do you think about those two teams?
Yeah, I think the Chiefs ultimately win the division. It's again not a big sample size, but in the one head-to-head matchup, the Chiefs won, right? So you give them a little bit of advantage there. But not only that, Andy Reid's a much better coach and a more accomplished historically in his career than the Chargers coach. So right. I think they have the coaching edge. You have, like you said, Mahomes lost Tyreek Hill. So far, he's looked pretty good. I mean, obviously we all know he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league, but I don't know. I think the Chiefs win the division, and I think that the Chargers make the playoffs probably as a wild card. Right. One of the 11 wild cards they're letting in now in the NFL. But I think they make it, and like you said, that Raiders are too inconsistent, and the Broncos aren't that great of a team. That has added Russell Wilson, who is a good quarterback. He's in that second tier. I wouldn't put him anything above that. So I think it's the Chiefs.
Right, Nathan. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I was going back and forth in my head when Joseph was talking there. I know last season, I think I said the Chiefs, the reign of terror in the AFC is over with. I think I said last year, last season. I know they struggled for a while there, then they turned around and all that stuff. But I mean, I definitely don't see them winning another Super Bowl with the team they have.
Yeah, well,
I mean, so part of me thinks, well, the Chiefs' kind of reign is kind of through. So, but then I think what happens is I bet the Chargers win their second matchup in LA, but I bet the Chiefs win the division. If they face each other in the playoffs again, it's going to be in Kansas City, and I bet the Chiefs probably win. It's hard to pick against Kansas City in Kansas City.
Yeah.
But I think if they have to play each other in the playoffs and it's in LA, I think the Chargers win.
Well, and I don't think they necessarily can continue their reign of terror. I just think that within the division, they already beat the Chargers once. You saw what the Raiders have to offer these first 2 weeks. It's not that great. Same with the Broncos. So they're going to win the division, I think. That's all.
Yeah. Well, I think it's definitely between them. I guess I'd have to say they probably win the division. I do think they're going to split with LA. I don't think they're going to beat the Chargers again in the regular season. But it's tough for me to say that, but I think they probably do. I don't know. But I don't – and like I said, I don't – but if they win the division, what do you see them doing in the playoffs, the Chiefs, then?
I don't know. I mean, I
don't think they beat the Bills. I think the Bills may be the team that's kind of ready. They've progressed from playoffs first round, playoffs second round. I think the Bills might be the team that knocks them off this year. They almost did last year, but we'll see. But I want to throw something out real quick. Joseph and I were driving last week, and he was driving, so I don't know if he heard it, but we were listening to the Herd Show with Colin Cowherd, and he was interviewing Sean Payton, who obviously has taken this year off as head coach, but has indicated that he does want to coach again. Could be with the Cowboys next year. But anyway, we'll get into that at a later date.
He does want to coach again, you said.
He has said that. Yeah. He said he himself coaching again. lot of the scuttlebutt is that Jerry Jones is going to hire him because he was in Dallas with Parcells back when Parcells was the head coach at the Cowboys. But anyway, he was talking about Patrick Mahomes, and he said that they did tremendous scouting on Patrick Mahomes, and they thought that he was by far the best quarterback out there available to draft, and they were going to draft him at number 11. And then the Chiefs traded up to 10, and he said when they got to the 10th pick, the Saints knew they had two guys. They were either going to take Mahomes or whoever they did take, which I think was a defensive Lattimore, right? But they wanted Mahomes, and what's his name? Peyton said to Colin Coward, he said, "Hey," he goes, "we saw nothing wrong with him." He goes, "The only thing we didn't like was his squeaky voice." He said, "But other than that," he said, "they wanted him and they were going to take him." Okay, and they had Drew Brees at that time, who obviously was at the end of his career. But my point is, going back to what I said before, is it's organizations, right? I mean, the Chiefs obviously saw something in him that the teams that were drafting 1 through 9 didn't see. And I think that's where, Joseph mentioned Andy Reid, and we mentioned talking about general managers. I think that's how you build a team. You have to make good decisions. And whether you like Patrick Mahomes or not, I mean, the guy's been pretty successful and he's got a pretty good body of work now. I mean, this is his 1, 2, 3, 4. This is his 5th full season.
Yeah, well, that's a great point. The two teams that we know are on the record of being interested in him have good coaches and organizations, the Saints and the Chiefs, right? So, and even had the Saints drafted him, right, they wouldn't have started him week 1 because they had Drew Brees.
Right.
And the Chiefs, he didn't start his first year at the Chiefs because this hell Alex Smith still was there.
He started the season.
The very last game. Yeah, right. It was kind of like a, get acclimated start, whatever.
Right.
But yeah, they did it the right way. And, obviously when you do it the right way with a good organization and you have his talent, that's what you get.
Right. Yeah, I think the Chargers, I'm going to go out on a limb and say I think the Chargers are the team that wins the division. I like what I saw Thursday night. They lost the game, but I just think that they have, I don't know, I think they have what it takes. I just think Herbert's more of an NFL prototype type quarterback. And I just think they're maybe a better team. That's just my own opinion. But
you could ask me another day. I may say something different on that, if who's going to win the division. But
right. Let's. Anything else you guys want to talk about when it comes to this particular week or where we're at after week 2?
Yeah, I mean, I guess just you touched on this a little bit with the Bills, and it's only been 2 weeks, and there's still some games tonight, but what we've seen for the 2 weeks, we ran very early. Who are your favorites to come out of East Conference right now?
From which conference?
East Conference.
Yeah, I guess for me, of course, we'll find out what happens tonight. Buffalo plays Tennessee, so we'll find out if Tennessee's for real or just posers. But I still think that right now, your 3 teams. I'm going to put 3 teams in the AFC that I think could get to the AFC Championship game, and that's the Bills, the Chiefs, and the Chargers. I don't see anybody from the South Division getting there. I really don't see anybody. We talked about the Ravens, but again, they're 2 up and down. So I think it's going to be either the Bills, the Chiefs, or the Chargers in the AFC. And the NFC, I think the NFC is wide open. I think the Buccaneers have to be the favorite. I mean, they finally got over the hump and beat the Saints. So I think they've got to be the favorite with Tom Brady there. I'd like to say the Rams, but Joseph, you touched on it. The Rams just look like a team that's still got Super Bowl hangover. They could have very easily, Nathan touched on the fact that they almost blew the lead to the Falcons. They could very easily be 0-2. I don't think the 49ers have enough to get there. I think the Buccaneers have to be the favorites, but I think the Packers are going to be there too because they got Aaron Rodgers. I don't think anybody from the East is going to get there because I think the only team that I think has enough talent is maybe Dallas, and Dallas is notorious for blowing games when it really matters. So again, I'll recap. AFC, I think it's the Bills, the Chiefs, and the Chargers. NFC, I think it's down to the same 2, Packers and Buccaneers.
I would agree with definitely the NFC. It's those 2. Buccaneers will look great, especially their defense. But I do want to see them play like a top flight team just to see. I think they'll be fine. It's just that Jameis Winston's terrible, and the Cowboys, Dak got hurt, and they were kind of scrambling in that game, and they're not that good either. So, not to take anything away from Tampa Bay, but just just want to see how they look against some better competition. But yeah, it's those two, and then I personally would give the Ravens a better shot of getting to the AFC Championship than the Chargers, especially if things are clicking for them, like we talked about. They have the talent to go 13-4 or 14-3 even. And if they get hot rolling into the playoffs and start rattling off some wins, they can get there. I'll say that.
And they'll have a bye week. They'll have a bye in the first round of the playoffs. If the Chargers don't win the division, they'll have to play. So that just makes it hard too. One extra game just makes it tougher.
Well, to touch on Joseph's point about the Buccaneers, we're going to find out a little bit about them right away. They play the Packers this week coming up. Then they play the Chiefs. Both those games, though, are at home, I believe. Then they play the Falcons, which won't be a problem. Then they're at the Steelers, which if
not a problem.
Back, that still should be a game.
Roethlisberger's not there anymore.
Yeah, he's not there. They play the Ravens at home on October 27th. Then they play the Rams, which I think is going to be a game that we'll tell a little bit about. They play the Saints again, and that's pretty much it after that. So we're gonna find out a little bit about their defense and a little bit about them, and especially in the next 4 or 5 weeks.
I didn't really give much thought to this question you're all talking about until we just talked about, but I have to agree with you all. I mean, if you think about it, really, it's not like there's really not that many teams that really have a great chance of getting to their conference championship game outside the ones you all name.
Right.
There's a lot of what's the parity in the NFL, like you said, but when it comes down to who's gonna be playing late in the year in the playoffs, it's a handful of teams. And
right.
And I agree with all of you. I mean, I'm not so ready yet to say. I do think the Rams have Super Bowl hangover. They have the makeup of a team that just that was the culmination of their franchise. For so many years, we won. They're in Los Angeles and they won it in Los Angeles and all the glitz and glamour and all. They have big time Super Bowl hangover. I think that would have happened to Tampa Bay too if Brady's not been there. They would have missed the playoffs last year because the same thing. That was everything led up to that for them. It was just a big letdown after that. But Brady, I think, kept them in line.
I agree with what you said too. So I'll put a twist on it. And my two teams that I don't think will get to the championship game, but have an outside shot. Okay, in the NFC, I think it's the Vikings. Now we have it. They did beat the Packers. Kirk Cousins he's not chopped liver. He's nothing to sneeze at. I'll say, but as I like to say, but he's not a upper echelon QB by any means. Right. They could come out tonight and look terrible against Philadelphia, but I don't think they'll look terrible. But they have an outside shot, and I think in the AFC, you still can't completely cross out the Bengals right now because they did get to the Super Bowl last year. Burrow had that appendectomy thing in training camp and didn't really play at all, and was trying to get healthy. And they're a team last year that didn't start off great and got hot down the stretch, so they have an outside shot also. I think still. Yeah,
I still think the Rams are one that are in the running for me, even though I do think they have Super Bowl hangover. I'm just not quite ready to fully count them out yet. I think they're in the running, but not as strong as the Buccaneers. It's weird to say the Packers, they don't have that much talent, but I have to say the Packers. I mean,
And the Packers' schedule is by far easier than the Buccaneers. I mean, they play the Buccaneers, but then they play the Patriots, the Giants, the Jets, the Commanders. And then they don't play a really challenging game till the Bills on October 30th. Then they got the Lions, the Cowboys, the Titans, the Eagles, the Bears, the Titans again, or not the Titans again, the Titans, Eagles, Bears. Then they have a bye. And then let's see here. Then the Rams and the Dolphins. So they have a fairly easy schedule if you want to put it that way. And let's face it, as much as I don't like Aaron Rodgers, I mean, the guy has a knack for bringing that team to levels that you don't normally think they would get to. So I think the Packers are going to be right there at the end,
unless what?
Unless they have an injury to Rodgers or,
That's about it, really, to Rodgers.
Yeah, that's about it, yeah.
The Lions aren't horrible. I thought maybe going in before last night, I thought, could they have a chance to win the division? Because I thought the Packers are probably going to not be quite the same. But after last night's game, seeing the Packers, I thought, no, the Packers are going to win the division. But the Lions, they kind of got hot last year, didn't they? Late in the year, kind of.
Lions? They did. They played better last year.
Later in the year. And then they came out and almost beat the Eagles I know the Eagles aren't that great. And then they beat whoever they played this past week. But
well, I think the NFC, and this is not really discussion for right now. I'm just going to throw it out there. I think the NFC is going to get really interesting over the next 2 or 3 years, and the reason I say that is because I think Brady's going to retire after this year, and I think Rodgers, he only has a couple years left, if that many. And when those two guys are gone, I mean, that really opens up the NFC because the rest of the NFC, pretty much has young guys at quarterback. So I think the NFC is going to be really wide open in 2 or 3 years.
Well, if the Saints can find another franchise quarterback, I think they're going to be right up in there.
That could be, yeah, that could be.
I will say about the Bills too, though. Every time I see the Bills, I still think like, oh, they're really good now, but they're still the Bills. I don't know if I bet on. I don't know.
That's a legitimate take. I'm with you.
Well, I was about to say that's kind of my thought. Like, well, they're still the Bills. I don't know if I really put all my eggs in that basket. I don't know if I can really count on them in the playoffs. It's the Bills, but we'll see what they do tonight. But because we're recording this on Monday night, week 2, but maybe they're just a great team now. Like maybe they're one of those teams where it's just they're great and that's it. There's no longer it's no longer iffy whether they're what kind of Bills team's going to show up. That's no longer the case. They're just a great team, maybe. And so because they showed a lot against the Rams in week 1, I didn't think they were going to come out like they did. So maybe that Bills stigma that I kind of have attached to them just from, I guess, historical reference, maybe I need to drop that. Maybe they're just a great team now and they're here to stay for like many years. But I still, it's just hard for me to believe that. Like I could see, like Knicks, I could see them. I just, even though I don't think it's going to happen, like for some reason I could still see them like, like missing the playoffs this year or something like that.
Well,
it's not going to happen, but I wouldn't be shocked because I would just chalk up to, oh well, it's the Bills. They were hot for a couple of years and now they're bad. Whatever.
Well, let me go back to what I said earlier, and I'm gonna leverage on what Joseph said about the Bengals not counting them out. I think going back to what I said, I think a team has to learn how to win and then learn how to handle winning. Okay, you look at the Bills. All right, they were a wild card to start their first year that they made the playoffs. All right, with Josh Allen. Then they won the division and lost a playoff game. Then they won the division, won a playoff game, and lost to the Chiefs. I think they've learned how to win, and now they're starting to learn how to handle that. I think they're making that progression, which we've seen a lot of teams do, go from no good to playoffs to championship games to Super Bowl. The Bengals, on the other hand, last year they got to the Super Bowl. Nobody expected them to get to the Super Bowl. And I think now they still maybe have not learned how to win completely. So I just think the Bills are primed. I think they're ready. I think they've made some draft choices. They've signed some free agents. I think they're at the point now where, hey, we're ready, okay? And that's why I think the Bills really are a legitimate football team right now. Now, are they going to win the Super Bowl? I don't know. They may not even get there. But I just think they're the team right now that is most prepared to get there, I think, in the
I agree. I think ultimately my take is that I agree with that. It's just it's hard for me to agree with that still.
It is. It is. But anyway, it's been a good week. Week 2's been a fantastic week. I mean, we've got gosh, I think Joseph said this in our text line yesterday. The NFL is great. I mean, that's what makes it so great is that you've got parity. You've got any given Sunday, any team can really win. We saw that yesterday with 3 teams that were on the doormat coming back and winning. And to show you that you've got parity, we've only had 2 weeks, right? There's 32 teams in the NFL. You've only got 6 undefeated teams left. And after tonight, you only have 5 because the Eagles are playing the Vikings, and one of them is going to lose if they don't tie. So after 2 weeks, 32 teams, you'll only have 5 teams that are 2-0. So I think that shows you how great the NFL is and how this thing is going to go down to the wire. So it's going to be an exciting season. And I think as we get further along, we'll start to see the cream rise to the top, and we'll start to see some teams like the Bengals last year that are surprising people.
Yeah, and one of those undefeated teams is the Giants. Who would have thought?
And that's right. One of them is the Giants. That's right.
I'm really looking forward to they play Monday night against the Dallas next week, right? I'm really looking forward to that.
Yes, they do. Yeah.
They should win that. I mean, they should. And they'd be 3-0 then.
Yeah, I think
like go ahead.
Go ahead, Jess.
No, I was going to say, your point, which was my point, how great the NFL is. You got the best players in the world. You've got parity. Like yesterday at 1:00, there were 7 games, only
Right.
7, right? The Red Zone channel is great. And I don't want to hear anything about college football. You've got 1,300 games every weekend and starting at all random times. You got games at 11 p.m. You got 47 games at noon. Talent's all mismatched and it's ridiculous. I don't want to hear about it. NFL, nothing like it. Every Sunday is a great NFL Sunday.
You're right about that. I was just thinking that at noon when the college football kicks off, you got a lot of games on, but I mean, you'd be hard pressed sometimes to find one game that you really is worth watching. I mean,
Right. Yeah.
The NFL, every one of those games, like you said, is the best talent, best matchups. They're usually all close. It's great. Yeah.
What do you think Scott Hansen does on Mondays? I bet you sits in the hot tub the whole day long and takes naps all day.
I bet you he does. I'm willing to bet he has some type, and I'm being serious. I'm willing to bet he has some type of throat regimen, like because he talks so much. I'm willing to bet he does some type of routine with like some type of tea or honey, or tries not to speak for so many hours. Because I bet he does.
Could be. Yeah.
He does. Yeah, there's no question.
I'm surprised. How does he not lose his voice after the first couple of weeks?
Yeah, I don't know.
He's not really yelling. I guess he's not. It's not like he's yelling. So
yeah.
Does he get paid? Does he get paid year round? You think?
I doubt it.
What's he doing in the offseason? Is he on TV at all?
I don't know. I thought he was.
I thought he worked for the NFL Network. Yeah,
that's what I thought. Yeah, I think he does some things for the NFL Network. So I think he's employed by them year round. But obviously, he's the red zone guy during the season, and then he does like spot interviews and pieces, in the off season for the NFL Network. But he's pretty good. I mean, he definitely keeps it interesting. Anyway, but no, a good week too. We got 2 more games tonight. The Buffalo Bills will take on the Tennessee Titans, and the Philadelphia Eagles will take on the Minnesota Vikings. So those should be 2 good games. And then next Thursday night, week 3, will kick off with the Browns and the Steelers, which should be a very good football game considering those 2 teams and where they're at in their development. So we're getting into the meat of it, and we'll see what happens. I mean, I think we're going to see some surprising teams just like we did last year, but I think we're also going to see some teams that have been there before that are going to be there again. So I want to remind everybody real quickly, remember our Twitter account at PressBoxPod. Remember our Instagram account also at PressBoxPod. And then also the YouTube channel, the PressBox Podcast. Lots of great stuff on there as well. We love talking NFL football. I promise we'll talk a little college football as we get further in the season. But right now, teams are still sorting themselves out. But right now, like I said many times before, we're at the sweet spot. We've got the NFL in full gear. We've got lots of great things going on in sports, and we certainly enjoy talking about it. So remember those things, Instagram app, our PressBox Podcast on the YouTube, and of course our Twitter account. So another great Sunday of the NFL. We'll be back again with you next week to talk some more NFL and some other things that are happening in the world of sports. So for Joseph and Nathan, I'm Ralph. We've enjoyed being with you. We hope you enjoyed the PressBox Podcast, and we'll see you next week.